All right. Welcome to this edition of Bourbon City Tackles podcast. Excited to have you back this week. Got a new guest, Mr. Greg Weber. Welcome to BCT podcast. How you doing?
Thanks. Doing pretty good.
Yeah. How's that bourbon treating you over there?
Really good. Really good.
Snagmaster's remote this time. Look at him over there. His background, some fishing lures, but I think it might need to be a tree. We'll work on that for next time.
Yeah, these are fishing lures for sharks.
Yeah, I mean, fishing lures in a tree needs to be the background for that one.
Yes.
So drinking on a little bit of Eagle Rare this time. Great bourbon. Used to be available. We were just talking before the podcast started. You drink some bourbon, I'm assuming?
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite bourbon?
Bourbon. I'm one of those guys, man. I drink it.
My man. I love it.
They laugh at me at work all the time because every office except for mine's got bourbon bottles, all over shelves. And then they get to my office and they're like, "Where's yours at?" And I'm like, "I drank it."
So you're more on consumption than collection, I'd say.
For sure. Yes. I don't collect any of it. I just drink it.
Awesome.
So,
I mean, I try to do a little bit of both, but I try to drink the good stuff just the same. Life's too short not to.
Yeah. If I get a real expensive bottle, I'll hold on to it for a little while, but.
Yeah, I'm going to have a hard time letting go of some of the bottles up there. Maybe crack them for a special occasion. Maybe we hit a certain amount of subscribers. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, excited to have you on the show, Snagmaster.
Hi, buddy.
Let's kick it off with your bourbon review. You want to do a little Kentucky Chew action?
All right, we got it going. It's a little Eagle Rare here. It looks like it's coming in and out of my tree here. But we'll take a sip nonetheless. So we'll give it a try. I like it. It's a little different than some of my favorites. I know this is one of yours, but I don't really drink a lot of Eagle Rare, to be honest. So this is one of the first times I've actually ever had it. I know, you guys talked about it going up in price significantly over the last few years, but I think it's a smooth finish, tastes good bourbon.
All right, we're going backwards in the depth of the bourbon reviews here.
Just a little. I was expecting him to talk about the flavor notes or something there.
Yeah. Any developments there?
No, I'm not that guy, pal.
No, I'm not either. So we're gonna have to rely on Tyler for that tonight.
Yeah.
If we're real lucky, we got a camera shot friend of ours. Won't mention his name, but if he's probably listening, knows who he is, works in the bourbon industry. Kyle, I think we're going to have to get him on soon and teach us a couple things.
Yeah, I mean, if you're counting on me for this, you're counting on the wrong guy.
It's not going too well.
I just taste bourbon and it's good. So, Greg knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've cracked up at every one of your all's episodes so far, listening to Gellner going, "That's the exact same response that I would have."
I mean, you've been watching the podcast?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you miss one?
I appreciate you tuning in and stepping up the game to be part of it. A lot of tackle coming in. You can't see it in here, but there's literally boxes of tackle everywhere.
Yeah, I was impressed when I came in today.
Yeah, well, we'll have to. I got a point of sale app, so I'm gonna we'll have to do some shopping here in just a minute. But all serious, thanks for joining the podcast. We've met through fishing. We fished bluegrass together. Your mom runs bluegrass.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about how you got to fishing. Like, let's talk a little bit about who you are, how you got here.
I mean, really, like I grew up fishing. Been fishing since I was in diapers with parents, grandparents, and stuff. Mostly local here. Grew up fishing no Lynn a whole lot. My grandparents used to take me down there when I was younger. My dad's parents. My great grandparents on my mom's side, they had a creek and a pond on the family farm and stuff. So, used to go down there and fish constantly. Any chance we got, that's all me and my brother did was just stay at the pond and fish the whole time. But started tournament fishing when I was about 8 years old with my dad.
Yeah. Now did y'all fish together tournaments?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my dad worked at the Toyota plant in Georgetown, Kentucky, and they had a bass club there that was for Toyota employees. So as long as one person in the boat was an employee at Toyota, you could fish them. So he started taking me and my brother, and we would alternate each month. Like I would fish one of them, and then the next month my brother got to fish, and then I would fish the next one. We would do that all year, and that was really, I guess, how I got started, tournament bass fishing, and fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Then it fit my competitive nature that I was always big into little league sports and stuff, and all the way up through high school, and fishing was that I don't know, it was just something extra, something special that I always liked to do.
Yeah.
Tyler, we didn't know, but Greg was part of the first Toyota series. Sounds like forget what's going on in Gunnersville. That's the real
OG
Toyota
one.
series right there. Yeah.
Yep, the original.
There you go.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people get started. Is they go pond fishing and they really like fishing. Like when I was a kid, my grandparents lived at a house off of Zone Road, which is out there towards like Hillview area, kind of in some back roads.
I was gonna say my brother lives off something, so
yeah. And we had a pond right next to my grandparents' house, and I've always been known to be a morning person. My wife hates it, but I remember being super small, setting my alarm, getting up at the crack of dawn, digging through poles, and going over there and fishing by myself. And one time I caught a really good sized catfish. I don't know, on a worm or something. And I wanted to show it to my grandpa, who wasn't home yet. And my grandmother was a big outdoors woman, and she was big on archery, and my grandparents were big on archery. And so she got it. So she filled up the bathtub, a jacuzzi tub, with water. We stuck this catfish in there, and she let it in her bathtub, her soaking tub, just to show Grandpa, because I was so proud of my catch there.
Yeah, we used to do kind of the same thing. We would, me and my brother would catch a fish and come running back to the house with it down at my great grandparents' house. And
From Nolan?
No, this was
pond.
actually the pond down in southeastern Kentucky, down in Barberville. So we would, like I said, we would run back to the house with it, and we usually would end up with a 5-gallon bucket and throw it in there, show it to my grandpa and great grandpa.
Listen, Greg, I talked to your mom the other day about this, and you had way too many syllables when you said Barville.
Yeah, you're right. It's Barville. It is Barville.
Way too many.
He's churching it up in here.
If somebody's going to find it on the map, I got to make sure I say it right,
That's
but
right,
if you're
baby.
a local, it's Barville.
Well, I mean, I was starting to question how genuine the story was if he wasn't going to call it the right thing to start with. So you started fishing tournaments with your dad. I'm assuming that you guys who did better. I have to ask the hard question here. Stu and Dad, or you and Dad, who had the better success?
Honestly,
who was the net man?
Yeah,
we went back and forth really, but I'll be honest. I mean, my brother and my dad cashed way more checks. I don't know that.
Don't say it.
I was gonna say I don't know that I cashed a check with my dad in the Toyota tournaments back then.
Toyota series, the original.
Yeah, the original Toyota series.
OG.
But
Right.
I remember, actually, I take that back. We cashed several checks, but they were big fish checks. But we were never in the money that I can recall. If it was maybe once or twice, but nothing that really stands out. But I know my brother and them did, several different times. They had one at Barron. I remember they had like a 16, 17 pound bag. They were, back then, we were tickled to death with that. That was monster bag.
I'm tackled if I can catch a 16-pound bag.
I still am,
I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, I promise you, there's a lot of tournaments these days. I'd be tickled with a 16-pound bag, but looking back, like I said, those special days like that were few and far between. But I didn't care then. I just loved fishing, and that was what it was all about. But
I mean, really, that's what brings us together. That's how we've met. Kyle and I were friends. Snagmaster and I were friends a long time ago, and reconnected over some fishing. Went and wrecked some smallmouth at believe it or not, Taylorsville.
Right. Yeah.
That's a rarity. Haven't been able to duplicate that ever since. So that was
it. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, dude, the smallmouth kind of took off there, at least up in the river section of Taylorsville, and I never even knew they were really in there.
No.
Yeah. We're going to edit that part out. Yeah. There's a magic time, especially in March, when that water hits about 55. If the river gets clear, it's pretty good up there. It was. It used to be, but
I was
now
gonna say I never got to experience it. I heard it, yeah, I saw a few get weighed in a few tournaments that I was fishing in, but I mean, Taylorsville's always been Taylorsville. I mean, 14 and a half inch largemouth all day.
It's a fickled lake.
Yes,
So for our listeners out there, probably a lot of them fish Taylorsville.
quite a few, I'd say.
You fish Taylorsville a lot. I fish it some,
Yeah.
not as much as when I started. I mean, that's where I cut my teeth.
Right. Yeah, I used to fish it a lot when I was younger. It was close to the house. We could run out there. Fish the Tuesday nighters for probably 4 or 5 years. With Shuddy, actually.
What would be one piece of advice you give our listeners on fishing Taylorsville now, today?
Today,
Don't.
it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's random. It's like, I don't know. I've never been able to put a pattern together on that lake like I can somewhere else. It's just like there's certain places that continue to produce.
Where's that at? You said?
Yeah. I don't fish it that much, but I still got to keep something under, wraps.
Yeah,
There.
it's over by the stick up near the muddy water.
Yeah, right where the stick-ups are.
By the
Yeah.
Yeah. I've caught some over there myself.
Right.
You know, it's funny. It's funny. I grew up on Taylorsville. Obviously, I went to Spencer County schools my whole life, and I still suck fishing out there. I mean, it's exactly what you're saying, Greg. It's hit or miss. One day they're biting something, a week later they're completely on a different pattern in a different area. So, and I grew up crappie fishing, so I came to the bass scene pretty late compared to you guys.
Right.
And that's not the lake that you want to try to go out and, be a big time bass fisherman on.
I'll say though, it's coming around. Like if you look at the size of the bags that are weighed when it fishes good,
Yeah,
I feel like the quality's getting better.
it definitely is.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and it always has that like about a month, during the springtime when it really puts out some good bags and you see what the lake actually has to show out. But then as soon as that's done, it's like back to the the normal Dead Sea.
I would say the other thing I've been noticing is that the lake's clearing up as it's maturing. I feel like
It
Taylor
used to always have a good we
crankbait
called it
color.
that Taylorsville stain.
Yep.
I've heard it referred to my whole life.
Yep.
But yeah, you're right. It's definitely cleaning up. More times than not, when I've been out here lately, it's been more on the clear side than what I would call stained.
Yeah. I fished a tournament there. I guess it was Black Friday or right around Christmas time.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And I mean, it was good jerk bait, like single swim bait water. I mean, it had a good 2.5, 3 foot of visibility. It felt like.
I mean, and that one didn't take a horrible bag for Taylorsville, did it? It's didn't Squirrel win that with 13 or 14 or something?
Smoked me. Yeah. Yep. Saw him fishing a little bit, and I was like, I'm in trouble. I could just tell.
I was getting
dialed in.
Yep, that's one of those guys that on that lake,
he lives right beside it, but he don't fish it a lot.
He doesn't, but when he does, he's
strings.
usually on them.
So you start fishing the OG Toyota series is officially named now,
right?
And then you go into like KBN. What age was that?
So really started when I was in high school. My parents actually got the junior program started for the Kentucky Bass Federation.
No
Kentucky
kidding.
Bass Nation.
So
yes.
so your mom and dad.
My mom and dad were part of the original committee that was formed to start that. So my mom and dad both being involved with the Kentucky Bass Federation back then. This was before the split between BASS and FLW with the Federation. It was all affiliated through BASS. And so they started that program to try and get kids more involved with fishing. So there was about six different people that were on that committee. It was my mom and dad, Craig and Cheryl Obermeyer, Greg Marshall, Carlette Obermeyer. They were all very big influences in getting that started here. It was one of the first programs in the nation that was actually started. And then everything was really kind of modeled off of the Kentucky program that they started back. I think I was a sophomore or a junior in high school when they started that. So it was broken into 2 age groups. It was 11 to 14 and 15 to 18 were the age groups that you could be in. And I came in I was 15, 16. So it's like I only had a year or two in it. My brother he started in the younger age group, being a year and a half younger than me, and got to fish all the way through the older age group and stuff. But
I
yeah,
did not know that until today, like
yeah,
till this moment. So you fish the OG Toyota series.
yep.
You're like, my legacy's not done. Get together with some friends and your parents, wanting to support your interests and seeing a need, right?
Yep.
A need for kids like you or younger people at that time. I guess you're kind of like a young adult at that point.
Right.
To do something for them, to give them a place. And now it's like that, high school fishing is
It's exploded. I mean, so like even when I started fishing it, once I turned 18 and graduated out of the program, the person that they had nominated as the actual youth director had to step down, and they were looking for somebody to take it over, and nobody actually stepped up, and I took that position, and until like 2 years ago, have held that title,
really.
and still been very involved with helping run the high school program and stuff.
Well, tell me about the haircut you had back then, because I've seen some pictures.
Well, that haircut actually came around several years after that. I was going to say there were a lot of years of it, just like it is today. But
We're gonna have to drop a pic of that, Tyler.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm gathering is it went from here down to here.
yes,
It migrated down.
I was going to say, I was trying to think about, I want to say it was like 2013, 2012,
You
2013.
had a big fro.
Yes.
Giant fro.
Actually, so a guy that was fishing the adult trail of the Federation that I was kind of running around with and traveling a bunch with back then, Heath Martin, qualified for Federation Nationals. And he asked me, well, so the youth directors get to go to nationals as well. So they always have a national meeting during the week of the national championship down there for the Federation level. So
Yeah.
I was down there as a youth director and then hanging out with Heath because he was our person that had qualified for that year from the state of Kentucky. And we were in West Monroe, Louisiana, home of the Duck Dynasty.
Yeah.
Down there, they were fishing the Ouachita River right there. And we were riding around and passed a guy, a white guy that had an afro. And Heath looked at me. He was like, dude, that's what your hair would look like if you'd let it grow out.
Challenge accepted.
And I was like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And he kept running his mouth. And we came back home, and a couple weeks later, we were at another tournament, and he was standing in the boat ramp parking lot, running his mouth about it, and got a bunch of guys together, and they all agreed to put some money up and bet me that I wouldn't let my hair grow for a full year. So the pot got up to like $800 cash.
What?
Yeah, a couple cases of beer, some fishing tackle, some rods and reels and stuff.
What?
And I was like, all right, sign me up. I'm doing this. So I let my hair grow for a full year, and it surprisingly went from when I was a little kid, I had the perfectly straight bowl haircut, and then I let it grow out when
Dumb and Dumber special.
Yes, exactly.
Me too.
So
I'm not gonna deny it.
Right. But yes, when I grew it back out, then it came in curly as it could be, and it was just like Heath had said. I mean, it was a full blown afro, and I rocked that for like 6 years.
Yeah, that thing was huge. Like I felt like when I first met you, you had it, and I swore you were like hiding fish in there during tournaments, getting out on the lake, pulling a 5-pounder out of your hair and putting it in the box. But yeah,
there were a lot of people thought that. I was gonna say, even to this day, like I still had, like, a couple weeks ago at the Louisville Boat Show, I had people coming up to me and they were like, "Oh, you cut your hair?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I cut it like 6 years ago." But that's still what I'm known for.
Awesome. So, what's we all have good fishing stories. Everybody loves a good fishing story. Pick one, the most memorable fishing story. And make it fun. Let's I recall something about some shad wraps or something that you told me about once. So maybe we start with that one.
Easy there. That's another one of those things you might want to. We have to edit out at the end of this.
No, those are the best ones.
No, I think I know the story you're referring to. That was so I was actually at Lake Norman in North Carolina. It's just the 1 year, I think.
I think so.
And so I was actually, at the time, I was traveling with Bradley Roy on the Opens Trail. I was traveling with him fishing as co-angler while he was trying to qualify for the Elite Series.
Wow.
Actually, in this tournament at Norman, he had actually qualified the first year that he fished the Opens, and this was his first year on the Elites and fishing the Opens again. And so we were at the hotel room, retying baits and stuff out in the parking lot. Several guys there that that we knew from Kentucky happened to all be at the same hotel, and this random guy that I didn't know, young boy, younger than me, comes up and starts, hanging out beside the boat. We're sitting there talking and telling stories, and he's like, "Oh, you're from Kentucky. I got down and fish there a little bit every once in a while. I'm from up in Indianapolis area," and we're just sitting there, shooting the shit. And so, he asked me, he's like, "Yeah, I know this guy from Kentucky," and he told me like in the fall and the winter, all you got to do is go to Rough River, Nolan, and Barron and throw a shad trap, and you can just catch them all day long.
Pause. If you're listening to this podcast, that might be the biggest piece of juice that's come out so far.
Might be.
So keep going.
And so me trying to protect the secret, that's it's not a secret anymore.
Yeah, you're protecting it real good now.
Yeah. I was like, oh no, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. You can catch some on it. It is what it is, dude. You catch a few here and there. And so we keep talking, and finally I'm like, who's this guy from Kentucky you keep referencing that, you told you about throwing a shad trap? And he says, oh, well, his name's Kyle Raymer.
Oh, really?
Which, and I'm like, oh, Kyle, which, at the time, like I'd met him through the junior program.
Kyle was spreading the juice.
Kyle was the one that originally was spreading the juice.
I'm going to have to watch what I tell him.
I know, dude. And so after that, I was like, after I heard it was Kyle that told him, I was like, oh no, dude, it's the truth. I was like, you can wear them out. I was like, I've actually, won quite a few tournaments the last, year or two throwing that down there. And so the person that I was actually talking to, though, turned out to be Jacob Wheeler. And so,
oh wow, I didn't know that. Actually, didn't know this story. I was thinking about the one where you slept on the shad traps.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, we can go into that one too, but that one's a little bit more embarrassing on myself. But yeah, so I was gonna say, I mean, that was the one, like I said, I thought you were referring to. But yeah, so Wheeler, Kyle had spilled the beans to Jacob, and like I said, I mean, this was obviously way back before he is what he is now, and so since then, or after that, we've kind of always kept in touch a little bit here and there.
That's funny.
Not to the level that Kyle does.
That took a completely different turn. I was thinking about the funny story about laying on some shad traps, picking them out of your back.
Well, that involved bourbon. So I mean, actually that would have tied in well. I didn't even think about that.
I was teasing it out, and then like I think Kyle said it best, or Snagmaster said it best last time. Who are we fishing against?
I used to co-angle with Bradley Roy. Like I'm over here. I co-angler with Tyler. Like what the hell?
Well, I mean, not trying to name drop a bunch, but I was going to say, I mean, like when I started fishing in the Federation level on the adult trail and stuff, Brandon Card was fishing the local levels here in the Federation. Been on, I think, 3 state teams with Brandon. He was fishing the Opens too when I was traveling with Bradley. Him and his brother were actually fishing them together. So, that was kind of part of our group that we were all, running around with for the Opens anyway, back then.
But I'm so jealous. I mean, you and Raymer, and I mean, plenty of other guys are going to have all these stories. And when I was your age, I was hitting a white ball around a field playing golf and working jobs.
Well, I mean, I played golf a little bit too, but I think golf, I've got several different sports that I'm involved in now that are just like my fun thing. Fishing's still the serious deal, and always really since high school has been for me. I mean, it's basically been, I view fishing more like my full-time job than my actual full-time job. So, but.
Well, you got another side hustle now that, well, I wouldn't call it a side hustle, but something that you're known for the wintertime. And what I was really excited to talk to you about, you rig a lot of boats in the wintertime, right?
I do quite a few anyway, at least. I mean, not just the winter, but year round. Definitely the winter time seems. I'm not fishing as much, so it's easier for me to get to stuff. But yeah, got started on that probably.
Like electronics, trolling motors. What do you do most of the time?
You name it, and I work on it pretty much. Like I mean, the last weekend, last night, Valentine's Day, and I told my fiance I was like, I can't come over. I got to go work on a boat. So
That will work before you get married. You might want to rethink that
You just took the words out of my mouth. Like before the wedding cake.
What I keep
Before the
hearing
wedding
is
cake,
it's going to
that's right.
change after I get married, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
I'm certainly looking forward to the days when you practice less. How about that?
Yeah.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, Greg, I think that's when I first met you. That's one of the first things I was told is like you're the guy. Like if there's anything wrong with the boat or your electronics or your wiring, you're the guy to talk to. And so, TG and I like to give nicknames for our guests. I think we called Raymer the Prodigy. I'm calling you the crew chief. All right, so
dude, I've definitely been known for that my whole,
Yeah.
I guess you'd say fishing career or whatever. I
Yeah.
was gonna say it really evolved from the fact that when I got started in fishing and stuff, I couldn't afford to pay anybody to do anything, so I
Yeah.
had to learn to do it myself. I mean, I used to carry a spare gear case in the bed of the truck.
What? Like a lower
Yeah, I
unit?
used to carry a whole lower. I could drop a lower unit off my boat and change it out in 15, 20 minutes.
And that's because it's the way you drive.
Well, I mean, I do have a little bit of a reputation for tearing stuff up. I mean, I've totaled a few boats, so. But
that's also why I'm calling you the crew chief, because you're related to NASCAR for sure.
I was going to say, I mean, I've helped tear engine blocks down in the parking lot of a hotel and rebuild an engine the night before a tournament for buddies and stuff. And
I will say this: for any tournament that he didn't win, if you could somehow measure your average speed of how fast the boat has been moving through the day, he's got it, hands down.
Yeah, and I think we have to stop here for our listeners and say we don't promote that. I think Greg definitely, there's no probably about it. Greg has more boat ejections than I have Angler of the Year trophies. So that's definitely worth saying. We could have a whole podcast about how many times you've been thrown out of a boat, buddy.
Yeah, we could do a whole other night talking about boat accidents and stuff I've torn up out there.
It's so funny because like Nathan and I will be fishing a tournament and we'll hear a boat coming and it's hauling the mail, and we'll both look at each other and kind of chuckle and go, "Here comes Greg."
Yeah.
And about 8 out of 10 times, it's you.
It's me.
It's you. I mean, it's
what? Who's it? Who is it? The other two?
Well, the other guy is the snag master guy.
There's only 2 speeds out there. It's either idle or full throttle.
That's right.
Got somewhere to be.
That's right. Yeah, every second you can save running spot to spot, it's another cast you can get in.
So, go ahead.
For me, it's a physical thing. Like with a hot foot, it literally hurts to go slow. So, I can't help it. I'm just saying. I got to send it.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense. so boat rigging, boat setup. I mean, you're all about getting the most performance, but let's talk electronics for a minute. There's a lot of people looking at live scope. I mean, there's all kinds. The technology
that's been the rage in the last couple of years for sure.
Crazy, right? Like, I mean, the amount of technology that is on a boat. I don't know if you look at some of the pros now.
Right.
They got 6 graphs on there.
Yeah, 5, 6 graphs. They're running, 3, 4. I mean, a lot of the guys on the pro circuits this year are running 4 live scope transducers. I mean, who would ever thought that we would be at the point where we've got that much money and that much stuff tied up into just our electronics? I mean,
and I still can't catch them use it.
Yeah, like I mean, I met with a guy this week about rigging a boat out for him, and he bought a used boat. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, he's upgrading from what he's got, and he's gonna have almost more money tied up in his electronics that he's going to have me put on than what he paid for the boat.
And every 3 years, something better comes out.
Yeah, you're constantly having to upgrade it, and so it's a never-ending cycle. It's just like your iPhone or whatever. I mean, as soon as you get one, the most recent, you think oh yeah, I'm good for a little while, and then something else comes out, and gotta have it. So
for the listeners out there who are like you started, You know, maybe they want to go get the new and latest thing. They can't, sometimes paying those boat mechanic out, cost per hour is crazy. Like you take it to the shop and you have them rig it for you.
Right.
So the DIY, the person that does it themselves.
Yep.
They have their boat, they buy some new electronics. Tell them, like, come up with 2 or 3 tips you think that are important for them to pay attention to, follow. Like, what would be your first rule, I guess you would say, or guidance?
I would say over the years of doing it and trial and error, a lot of it, I would say the number one most important thing is clean power. Having the least amount of interference and the most voltage going to your units as possible.
So how do you do that?
So I was going to say we've all learned and heard, if you do very much research on it, obviously like the bigger gauge wire you can run to your units.
C clear, those type of
and those guys have capitalized on what I was doing beforehand, because I typically build the harnesses myself as opposed to going out and buying a C clear harness or I think Hennessy Marine or Hennessy Outdoors is making one. Sonar Pros makes one. I've installed definitely several of the Sonar Pros and the C Clears. Haven't done Hennessy's yet, but
what's your preferred wiring harness? If you buy, so we got 2 options here. You can get your own heavy gauge wire and you can pull it. Right? Are you hooking that into the boat wiring harness?
No, that's what I was getting ready to get into next. Is you want it to be isolated, like so. I run like an individual power wire, like an 8 gauge wire to a on off switch, and then all the electronics, whether I build my own harness or buying a C clear or something like that, tie that into the on and off switch, because you don't want any other electronics running through what your actual depth finders are tied into and your transducers are tied into. You don't want every time you turn on something electrical in a circuit like that, you have noise that comes through. So every time you turn on a recirculator pump or your bilge pump kicks on or your nav lights are on, just the master power switch in the boat, that's drawing current. It's cutting the amount of current or the amount of voltage going to your units down, and it's causing interference, whether you realize it or not. It is, and it affects your picture quality. So that, I think, by far is one of the most important things that you can do.
So if you're listening out there and you got a new head unit, your new graph, a new transducer, whatever, dedicated power to the battery, right?
Dedicated power to the battery. And then I think with the demands that the new electronics these days have, I think no less than like 10 gauge wire running to the actual units themselves. So like if I build my own harness, it's all 10 gauge from the power switch, the on off switch, to the actual cable that hooks into the back of the units or into the sonar box, whatever it may be.
Okay. Yeah. If you got 2 graphs on the front, are you running 2 runs of power wire up there, one for each graph?
I do. Yes.
You do. So,
I do.
So every graph has its own power and its own ground?
Yes.
Okay.
So like the boat that I'm going to be, the guy that I met with this week, and the one that I've been working on this week, each individual unit has its own hot and ground wire ran to the power cable. So like I'm doing 4 graphs on this boat that I met with the guy this week about. Actually, so we're doing 4 graphs, a live scope. So I'm actually going to have 5 separate wire pulls.
And pulling wire is a lot of fun.
It is.
That's the worst part, right?
That is the worst part. Especially, it depends on the boat brands. Like the one I'm working on now, like if it was any other brand, I'd have been done with it Sunday, but I'm still working on it because.
And that's because of the amount of room that's in the gunnel.
Yep.
Okay.
I was going to say, I mean, so not knocking anybody's brand or anything, but there's 2 particular brands that I will say are the most difficult to run wire and work on that I've experienced anyway. One being Champion, which there's not that many of them around anymore, but several of our buddies are running them. So I've worked on them, but there's in a Champion, there's like no access points to get to anything. So it's so hard to even, like, if I can get the wire to the console, the problem is getting it pulled out to actually go to the console. But I would say even that one's not as bad as working on a Ranger.
Because of the foam?
Because of the foam.
Yeah.
because so they foam everything in and everything's ran through a rigging tube. And so the rigging tubes are great as long as it's done at the factory.
Mm.
But they use a corrugated rigging tube. So anytime you try to run like a fish tape, or like I use like a fiberglass flexible stick that, you can screw them together to whatever length.
Kind of like
you
a
need.
moped flag type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anytime you try to run one of those through that corrugated tube and it makes a turn, they get hung up in there because it's not a smooth edge.
Okay.
And like what I've been running into right now, I spent 2 hours digging foam out of a boat last night, and I still haven't got to the rigging tube yet. Because I need to be able to mount the box for the live scope transducer in the rod locker, and there's no access point in the rod locker to pull wire into. Whereas like if you go to Phoenix, Triton, Skeeter, Nitros, any of those boats, I mean, the wires are ran up inside the gunnel, but there's no foam in there. So like I can just, reach into the rod locker, reach up into the gunnel section, and I can find the actual harness right there. So, they're really simple to pull wire through. But when you get into some of these brands, they can really be a pain in the butt.
So the size of your wire matters in this case. It's not even just how you use it.
That's the other thing too, is the plugs that are going in the back of these units keep getting bigger and bigger. And so that adds to the challenge of trying to get stuff pulled through, especially like through those rigging tubes and stuff.
Yeah, to be clear, Tyler, it's all about the girth. Like that's what we're talking about here. So
yeah, you gotta have a thick
gotta be
wire.
thick
wire.
I don't want.
Actually, I don't want your wire short too, right?
Yeah, I mean the shortest amount of wire possible as well. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. But no, I mean, like I said, that's probably the number one,
so I'm
most important and the hardest thing to do is running the cables.
Any other tips you'd want to give?
Other than that, I mean, just making sure all your connections are good. Making sure you use and like a higher quality connector and stuff. Don't just go to Walmart or the dollar store or whatever and buy the $3 pack of connectors. Like I actually order my stuff. I mean, and granted, I get it through Amazon and stuff usually, but Amazon or a couple other websites online. But you can get ones. Like I said, usually everybody's trying to save on money, but that's not where you want to skimp at. Because when I see voltage drops from running wire, it usually is because somebody used either didn't do the connection right, didn't get it crimped good, or didn't solder it properly. Like, I mean, soldering it's the way to go, which I usually try to do on most of my stuff. But if you have to use a connector, making sure like you've got a good set of like crimpers to actually make sure it's coming down on there. Because the other thing you don't want to happen, you don't want it to come apart out there on the water. And we all know that boats are horrible,
especially when you're driving them.
Yeah, especially when I'm driving them. The vibration, the waves, like all that stuff. Like there's no shock absorbers or anything on a boat. Everything you do has to be able to withstand those impacts and the constant vibration and stuff that we put them through out there.
And I would say one more tip I would add from the little bit I've done: if you're pulling your wire and it gets stuck, don't force it.
No,
because the last thing you want to do is pull a wire loose, or nick a wire or something that's in your wiring harness.
Yep.
And boat won't start.
I've ran into it before. Yeah. That's one of the things I always try to double check when I work on somebody's boat is go back there and make sure that everything still works that was originally put in there before, I got started, to make sure I didn't knock a connection loose or break a wire somewhere or something. But I was going to say the second most important thing that I usually, or I think as far as rigging boats go is, as you guys have stated, I'm hard on stuff, tear stuff up all the time. So like I learned from rigging my own stuff, like how to build it where you don't have breakdowns on the water. You don't tear stuff up. I mean, we all run, tournaments go on, doesn't matter the weather, doesn't matter, the conditions. I mean, I've fished Kentucky Lake and 4 and 5 foot swells and ran from Kentucky Dam Village to Paris, Tennessee and back. And, you got to make sure when you get to Paris that everything's still working.
Right.
So you can spear some waves here and there. And,
Submarine style. I've done
Yep.
that before.
Yep. I've been knee deep in the floor of the boat with them before. But like all my, like when I mount them, like the mounts and stuff themselves, like I try to make sure everything is through bolted if at all possible. Like the over the pedal mounts and stuff, a lot of dealerships and stuff you go to will use like a lag bolt that just
Yeah.
screws in. And over time, like I was talking about, the vibrations and then the like actual impacts, like if you're spearing waves or somebody accidentally catches it with their foot or something like that, over time those screws start to pull out of the actual flooring and stuff of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
So like I actually drill holes all the way through and then run like big fender washers and stuff underneath there. So
Wow.
I mean, if it's one that I've rigged on your boat and you tear it off there, you've done something. But like the floor of the boat's coming out
You've
before.
exceeded the Greg
Yes.
Weber.
Yes, exactly.
Damage test.
Exactly. I was gonna say, I mean, I've never actually had one come off of one of my boats, and so I always take that as a testament that I must be doing something right with it.
Well, Mr. Crew Chief, what about boat maintenance? What are some tips you can give our listeners in terms of like what are some things that you look out for throughout the year? You know, we all change our oil and our lower unit, like our gear oil.
Right.
What are some other things that you've noticed, especially maybe by brand or by boat type, that listeners should look out for throughout the year?
I mean, obviously, general maintenance on everything is key to keeping it, having a long lifespan and continuing to work. We all think about the oil changes and the 4 strokes. Back when we were running 2 strokes, filters, serpentine belts, all that kind of stuff. Like, I may be a little bit over the top. Usually, like twice a year, I'm getting like with my 4 stroke, changing the oil twice a year, changing the gear lube twice a year. I don't care how many hours are on it. Like I'm changing it no matter what. But I think probably the most overlooked thing that I think happens, and it's something that I personally just went through my boat like it was a week and a half ago, doing is just checking bolts and making sure stuff's tight. I've seen, I can't tell you how many people come back in with a motor mount bolt like sheared off at the jack plate. And that's usually because those bolts have worked loose, and then you start running and stuff, like I said, through those waves and everything and vibrations.
Especially if you're going somewhere rough water, right?
Yes.
Like,
Especially if you go up north. Fish St. Lawrence, St. Clair, the Great Lakes.
Put a wrench on it, just make sure it can come loose.
Carry an impact or something with you. Like actually, Raymer was making fun of me because I told him I pulled my rub rail out and went through every screw on the side of my boat, like all the way around that connects the top cap to the hull, and made sure every single one of them was tight. A couple weeks ago, I went through every single bolt on the jack plate to the boat, every single bolt on the jack plate to the motor. Went all the grease fittings.
He's
and
not
stuff.
Married yet, folks. He's not married yet. That's about to change.
No, we're still gonna have to find time for that.
I got one more I would add: trailer maintenance.
Yes.
So bearings on a trailer, even new trailers.
Yep.
You need to keep an eye on it.
Doesn't matter what it is.
If you're driving to a tournament and you get a couple hours, you pull off at a gas station, maybe get a sandwich, some coffee. Reach down and touch your hubs.
Yep. I was gonna say every time I stop, fuel, food, get to the lake, whatever it may be.
Touch the wheel hub on your trailer.
I was gonna say usually if you watch me, I walk around and put a hand on every wheel hub.
Yep.
That was the other thing I went through. Lug nuts on the trailer. I lost a lug nut this year.
Yeah.
Mid season. I won't name any names, but I had a tire that had a nail in it and took it somewhere, and I was like, go ahead and rotate my tires and stuff on the boat trailer for me. And 2 trips later, I was missing a lug nut. So obviously somebody at that particular tire shop didn't do their job.
They didn't give it enough.
Exactly. Yeah.
We talk about like tightening up bolts and everything. I mean, you guys know what happened to me at Del Hollow, and just for the listeners, obviously, like the trim bolt.
Rub rail off.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was the second time.
That's a known issue with the Mercury right now.
Yeah. I mean, so
Del Hollow's curse. What happened the other time?
Well, the trim bolt on my boat on my 4-stroke came loose and effectively shut down my trim. So, we're in the middle of a tournament. I actually was doing well, had a nice bag going, but could not finish. And oh yeah, it was a nice Gellner bag. But anyway,
I was gonna say,
we
I think I had like me and Raymer fished that one
Oh,
together. We had like
whatever.
17 that day, maybe.
yeah, I don't want to hear it. But no, I mean, just had I got out, made sure all the bolts were tight, made sure everything was good. That doesn't happen. And what it effectively ended up doing, you guys know I had to jump in the water. The water was like 42 degrees. Had to jump in with Squirrel. Shout out Squirrel for being a great guy, and lift my motor up, put it on, and I learned a valuable lesson on the way home that when the trim fails on your boat, strap that motor down for your trip home because it's going to bounce.
Dude,
And it bounced.
I was gonna say I felt guilty about that as well because probably 10 years ago I had not the exact same thing, but I had a trim unit on a motor actually go out, like blew a seal, and then so I lost all the trim fluid while I was out on the water. And on the way back home, coming up to Western Kentucky, I had the old school transom saver on it that actually goes to the trailer. And didn't realize that my motor was bouncing up and down, and the transom saver, the little pads on the side, actually punched 4 holes in the side of my gear case. So when I got home, I had gear lube just running all over the driveway, and had to buy a new gear case.
All right, so we talked a lot about preventative maintenance. We talked about repairs. I'm going to make a list real quick of maybe 3, 4, 5 items that everybody should have in their boat or with them when they fish. So we'll kind of play off of this. Number 1, a short flathead screwdriver.
Yep.
And that is especially if you have 4-stroke, because there is a little bolt on the side that will release the pressure from your hydraulic cylinder. So if you're like what happened to Snagmaster, if you don't have that and that fails,
I don't get home. I don't get home.
So you need something for that. I would say you need 3 amp and 5 amp fuses for your graphs.
Yep,
for sure.
A little baggie of them.
Yep.
A prop nut, a spare prop nut for a trolling motor.
Yep.
And a shear pin.
And a shear pin.
Yeah, I was gonna say I carry an actual spare prop for the trolling motor in the boat with prop nut and pin.
I would say some kind of 4-way or something, change a boat tire.
Yep.
What else?
So I keep a prop wrench.
Prop wrench is going.
I mean, I carry a spare prop, and after my deal at Barron, I carry a spare hub now too.
My prop for a while.
Yeah, I carried yours for a little while till I can get a new one in. I mean, unfortunately, the sling blades. It doesn't matter if you hit anything or not.
Especially out of Fury.
Yeah, it's getting to be any brand, any one of them. It's known for happening on, unfortunately. But and that's just part of the side effects of us running these boats the way we do. I mean, we all at times anyway. I do every time I start the motor, but most of us at some point we're running these things to their max. I mean, it's like a race car. You're sitting there, you run it, 5,000, 6,000 RPMs, sometimes for an hour and a half straight. I mean,
with hydraulic jack
would never
plates
think
too,
of hydraulic plates.
Yeah.
I mean, you're raising it up, you're surfacing props, and stuff's gonna happen. You're gonna tear stuff up. That's part of that's why everybody always says that what is it, an acronym? BOAT stands for break out another 1,000.
I think it's 2,000 now.
It's getting there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, things are crazy.
I mean, just this afternoon, I had to go to my boat because I got a battery charger. Bank went out, and I got it in the truck right now. Went and pulled it out tonight. I got to send it back to Dual Pro. It's covered under warranty, and they got to swap that out for me. So, but that's just like I said. But if it wasn't covered under warranty, I mean, what a new 4-bank charger's $500.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. So we went through the list of boat rigging tips. We talked about heavy gauge wire, making sure you pull right, carrying fuses. We talked about preventative maintenance. Anything else you want to cover as the last item?
You talking about stuff that you keep in the boat that I think everybody needs is not necessarily maintenance wise, but a decent little first aid kit.
Yeah.
We've all been out there and got a hook in a hand or leg or something like that. And something else that I carry for that like specific situation is I always have a big set of side cutters, because I fished one tournament with got a hook in my chest, and the guy was like, we got to go to the hospital. I was saying, no, we don't. I was like, I'm either going to fish with this in my chest all day or just leave it there, whatever. And so we had to actually cut the hook off in order to be able to like get it loose from my shirt and stuff. And if we hadn't had, side cutters in the boat, we wouldn't have been able to do that. But I was able to finish the day out and take care of the hook later.
So side cutters, 4-way, fuses, shear pin for a trolling motor, spare prop nut. Check the bolts on your boat.
Yep.
And pull heavy wire.
Yeah.
I would also add a cosmic brownie to that list. Like, don't leave home without it, folks.
Don't leave home without a cosmic brownie.
Yes,
the Snagmaster packs some mean lunches. I'm just gonna say.
See, that's what I always get knocked for. Is I very rarely ever have any food in the boat. It's
I take care of y'all.
But if you go on some trips with the Snagmaster,
well,
pack you a lunch.
Since I started fishing with Big Sexy, that's changed a little bit.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
He's always got food.
You gotta take a little lunch break.
Yeah.
Well, I had a great time tonight. I really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah.
I think we learned a lot about boat rigging. We learned that, like Mr. Raymer, apparently you're a ringer and just got all these contacts and fishing with all these pros. So I'm going to probably watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos tonight, maybe practice flipping in my garage just to feel a little bit better about the upcoming season. But I had a great time. Snagmaster was remote. Yeah. Worked out well. Excited to see he's got a background. We got some good audio, I hope.
I think it's a perfect background. I'm on that squirrel pattern, fellas. Like, all these lures are caught in a tree up high. So, Greg, thanks for being on the show. Learned a lot. I think it's really cool that your family played an integral part in building out the KBN and building out the youth programs, especially, and then growing that and using that as a model. So kudos to you and your family, man. Look forward to fishing against you this year.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it. So
yeah.
Been cool.
Thanks for joining us this week on our podcast. Excited to have some more upcoming content. Check out our website. We got some new tackle. If you're an angler fishing tournaments, check out our tournament rewards program. So brand new, popped off this week. Did you see that, Greg?
I did actually. Yeah, I need to. I got to get my form signed. and turned into.
We're gonna print that sucker out right when we get it up. But thanks again for joining. See you next time.
Yeah.